This pain you feel wasn't meant to break you, it was meant to separate you. There are moments in life that don't make sense at first. Moments that feel like loss, like something meaningful has been quietly taken from you without explanation. And one of the deepest, most confusing of these moments is distance, especially distance from the people you once called home. You don't talk the same anymore. The connection feels different. Maybe the warmth has faded. Maybe the conversations have grown shorter, colder, or even non-existent. And no matter how strong you are, a part of you keeps asking the same quiet question: why? Why did things change? Why does it feel like I'm walking this path alone? Why does the distance hurt so much? If you've been feeling this, you need to hear this now, slowly, clearly, and deeply. Not all distance is abandonment. Not all separation is punishment. And not everything that breaks your heart is meant to break you. Some separations are divine. There are paths in life that cannot be walked while holding on to everything from your past. There are levels of growth that require space, space to think, space to feel, space to become someone new. And sometimes, the hardest truth to accept is this: the people you love the most cannot always go with you where you're meant to go. That doesn't make them bad. That doesn't make you wrong. It simply means your journey is different. You were never meant to stay the same. You were never meant to shrink yourself to maintain comfort. And when your spirit begins to evolve, when something inside you starts shifting quietly, but powerfully, it can create a natural distance between you and those who are not meant to grow in the same direction. It's not rejection, it's redirection. Think about it. There were moments when you tried to hold things together. You tried to explain yourself, to be understood, to reconnect. You gave effort. You gave patience. You gave your energy, hoping things would return to how they used to be. But they didn't. And that silence, that gap, that emotional space that keeps widening, it feels painful because it touches something deep inside you. Something human, something that longs for belonging, for closeness, for home. But what if what feels like distance is actually protection? What if the very thing you're grieving is the thing that's been quietly saving you? There are environments that look familiar, but no longer align with who you are becoming. There are conversations that drain you instead of uplifting you. There are patterns, expectations, and energies that can slowly pull you away from your purpose without you even realizing it. And when you are chosen for something greater, something deeper, something meaningful, you don't just decide to walk away from those things. Sometimes they are removed from you, gently, gradually, painfully, not to hurt you but to prepare you. Because growth isn't always loud. It doesn't always come with celebration or clarity. Sometimes growth feels like loneliness. It feels like confusion. It feels like standing in a quiet space, wondering why everything that once felt certain now feels distant. But that space, that silence, that uncomfortable in-between is where transformation begins. You are not being isolated. You are being refined. There are parts of you that cannot emerge while you are surrounded by the same voices, the same expectations, the same emotional ties that once defined you. And so life creates space, not to take something away from you, but to give you something you haven't fully stepped into yet. Your clarity, your strength, your identity. And yes, it hurts. It hurts when the people who once understood you no longer see you the same way. It hurts when the connection fades without explanation. It hurts when you feel like you're drifting away from everything that once grounded you. But pain doesn't always mean something is wrong. Sometimes it means something is changing. You are stepping into a version of yourself that requires a different environment, a different mindset, a different level of awareness. And not everyone will recognize that version of you right away. Some won't recognize it at all. And that's okay, because this journey was never about being understood by everyone. It was about becoming who you were meant to be. There is a deeper purpose unfolding in your life. one that doesn't always reveal itself immediately, one that asks for trust, even when you don't have all the answers, one that requires you to walk forward, even when the path feels unfamiliar, and sometimes that purpose asks for distance. Distance from noise, distance from expectations, distance from anything that could interfere with your growth. Not because you don't love those people, but because you are being called to something that requires your full attention, your full presence, your full alignment. You are not losing your place in the world. You are finding it. So if you've been feeling that distance, if you've been carrying that quiet ache in your chest, if you've been wondering why things had to change like this, understand this. You are not forgotten. You are not abandoned. You are not alone. You are being guided, even in the silence, even in the confusion, even in the moments when it feels like everything familiar is slipping away. There is meaning behind this. There is purpose in this. And one day, when you look back at this chapter of your life, you won't just see the pain. You'll see the protection. You'll see the growth. You'll see the quiet, powerful way everything was being aligned for you. Because some distances are not punishment. They are preparation. It didn't happen overnight, it slowly changed. At first, it doesn't happen all at once. There's no loud moment, no clear breaking point, no single event you can point to and say, that's when everything changed. Instead, it begins quietly, almost invisibly, so subtle that you don't even recognize it while it's happening. It starts with small shifts. Conversations that used to flow effortlessly begin to feel slightly forced. You notice pauses where there never used to be silence. The laughter is still there, but it doesn't feel the same. It doesn't reach you the same way it used to, and you can't quite explain why. You tell yourself it's nothing. Maybe everyone's just busy. Maybe it's just a phase. Maybe you're overthinking, so you ignore it. But deep down you feel it. You feel the energy changing. You feel something slowly pulling away. And then, without realizing it, you begin to change too. You start holding certain thoughts back. Things you once would have shared openly, you now keep to yourself. Not because you want to, but because something inside you whispers, they won't understand. And maybe the first time that thought crosses your mind, it surprises you. Because these are your people. The ones who raised you, who knew you, who saw you before the world ever did. So why does it suddenly feel like you're speaking a different language? Why does it feel like you're being seen, but not truly understood? That's when the emotional distance begins to take shape. Not through conflict, not through anger, but through quiet misunderstanding. You say something and it's taken the wrong way. You try to explain yourself, but it turns into frustration. You express a feeling and it's dismissed, minimized, or misunderstood. And each time it happens, something small shifts inside you. Not enough to break the bond, but enough to make you hesitate the next time. So you start choosing silence. Not because you don't care, but because it feels easier than explaining yourself over and over again. Easier than feeling unheard. Easier than carrying that subtle disappointment when your truth doesn't land the way you hoped it would. And slowly silence becomes your comfort zone. You're still there physically. You still show up. You still play your role. But emotionally something is different. You're not as open. Not as expressive. Not as present. And maybe no one notices at first, because on the surface everything still looks the same. But inside you know. You feel it in the moments when you're surrounded by them, yet somehow feel alone. You feel it when conversations happen around you, but you don't feel part of them anymore. You feel it when you try to connect, and something invisible seems to block the way. It's not that you don't love them. You do. That never changed. But the connection, the ease, the sense of belonging, it feels like it's slowly fading. And that's what makes it so confusing, because there's no clear reason, no big argument, no dramatic ending. Just a quiet, growing distance that you can't fully explain. Sometimes, It shows up as misunderstandings that never get resolved, small things that build up over time, words that were said or not said, moments where you needed support but didn't feel it, times when you tried to express who you were becoming but felt like you were being pushed back into who you used to be. And that's where the deeper shift begins. Because at some point, you realize it's not just them changing, it's you. You're evolving. Your thoughts are different. Your perspective is expanding. The things that once mattered to you don't hold the same weight anymore. And the things that matter now are hard to explain to people who haven't experienced that shift themselves. So you stand in between two worlds, the one you came from, and the one you're slowly growing into. And in that space you feel out of place in both. Too different to fully belong where you used to be. Too early to fully step into where you're going. And that in-between space, it's one of the loneliest places you'll ever stand. Because it doesn't look like loneliness from the outside. But inside it feels like disconnection. It feels like being misunderstood in rooms where you once felt safe. It feels like watching people you love and realizing they no longer see the same version of you that you're becoming. And maybe the hardest part is this. You don't even know how to explain it to them. Because how do you put into words something you're still trying to understand yourself? How do you explain a feeling that doesn't have a clear shape yet? So instead you stay quiet, you observe, you feel. You grow internally, and the distance continues to widen, not through intention, but through transformation, through subtle emotional shifts, through unspoken thoughts, through the quiet realization that you are no longer who you used to be. And that realization changes everything. It changes how you respond. It changes what you tolerate. It changes what you need and what you can no longer accept. And sometimes, without meaning to, it creates space between you and the people who still expect you to be the same. That's when you start to feel it more clearly, the disconnection, the emotional gap, the sense that something has changed and there's no going back to how it was. Not because you don't want to, but because you've outgrown the version of yourself that once fit perfectly into that space. And that truth is both freeing and painful at the same time, because growth often comes with loss. Not always the loss of people completely, but the loss of how things used to feel. The loss of ease, the loss of effortless understanding, the loss of feeling fully seen without having to explain yourself. And so you sit with it, this quiet, unspoken distance, trying to make sense of it, trying to understand where you fit now, trying to hold on to love, while accepting that things are no longer the same, and somewhere deep inside, a realization begins to form. This didn't happen overnight. This wasn't random. This was a slow unfolding, a gradual shift, a quiet transformation that created distance, not to break you, but to change you. And deep down you knew something wasn't right. Not everyone is meant to understand your path. There's a kind of loneliness that doesn't come from being physically alone. It comes from being surrounded by people who know your name, who share your blood, who've been part of your life for as long as you can remember, and still feeling like something about you doesn't quite fit. It's a quiet feeling, one you don't always talk about. Because from the outside, everything looks normal. You have a family, you have history, you have shared memories, shared roots, shared space. But deep down, there's this unshakable awareness that you see the world differently. You think differently. You feel differently. And no matter how much you try to blend in, something inside you keeps reminding you. You are not the same. Maybe you noticed it early. The way you questioned things that others simply accepted. The way you felt deeply about moments that others brushed off. The way your mind wandered into bigger questions about purpose, meaning, truth, while everyone else seemed focused on what was right in front of them. At first, it didn't feel like a separation. It just felt like curiosity. But over time it became something more. You started to realize that your perspective didn't always align with theirs. Conversations that felt meaningful to you felt uncomfortable or unnecessary to them. Topics that stirred something deep inside your spirit were met with silence or confusion, or even dismissal. And that's when the gap begins. Not a loud, visible gap, but a subtle one, a space between how you see the world and how they do. You start to notice it in small ways. The way you process challenges, the way you respond to pain, the way you seek growth instead of staying the same. While others may focus on routine comfort, or what's familiar, you feel this pull towards something deeper, something unseen, something that doesn't always have a clear explanation, but feels undeniable. It's like your spirit is searching for something more, while everything around you is telling you to stay where you are. And that creates tension, because you love them, you respect them, but you can't ignore what's happening inside you. There's a shift taking place, one that goes beyond logic, beyond explanation, a kind of awakening that changes how you see everything, including yourself. And the more you grow into that awareness, the more you start to feel it. The distance, not necessarily physical but emotional, energetic, spiritual. You can sit in the same room, hear the same conversations, share the same space, and still feel like you're on a completely different frequency. Like you're observing more than participating, like you're present, but not fully connected. And it's not because you don't care. It's not because you think you're better. It's because your inner world has expanded in a way that can't always be expressed outwardly. You've started to value things that aren't always visible. Peace, growth, purpose, alignment. You've become more aware of energy, of intention, of the subtle dynamics that shape how people interact and relate to each other. And once you see those things, you can't unsee them. So when patterns repeat, when conversations stay surface level, when old habits continue without reflection, you feel it more deeply than others might. You feel the disconnect. And sometimes that disconnect turns into silence. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you realize that not everything you feel can be understood in the same way. You begin to choose your words carefully. You begin to hold parts of yourself back. You begin to protect your inner space. And that protection, while necessary, can also feel isolating, because now you're carrying thoughts, realizations, and emotions that don't always have a place to land within the environment you grew up in. So you keep them within. You grow quietly. You evolve internally. And from the outside, it may seem like nothing has changed, but inside everything is different. This is the reality for many who are on a path of deeper awareness. For those who are chosen, not in a way that separates them above others, but in a way that calls them inward, calls them higher, calls them to see beyond what is obvious. Being chosen isn't always comfortable. It doesn't always come with clarity or validation. Sometimes it comes with questions, with solitude, with the feeling of walking a path that no one around you fully understands. And perhaps one of the most challenging parts is this: feeling alone while being surrounded by people you love. It's a paradox, one that's hard to explain unless you've lived it. Because how do you tell your family that you feel different without making it sound like distance? How do you express that your mindset has shifted without it sounding like rejection? How do you honor your growth while still holding on to the connection that shaped you? These are not easy questions, and there's no simple answer. But what matters is this: your difference is not a flaw. Your perspective is not a mistake. Your growth is not something you need to hide or apologize for. You are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to see things in a new light. You are allowed to step into a version of yourself that feels more aligned, even if it doesn't fully match the environment you came from. And yes, it may feel lonely at times. It may feel like you're carrying something that no one else can quite see or understand. But that doesn't mean you're truly alone. It means you're becoming more aware, more intentional, more connected to something deeper than surface level understanding. And while that journey may create distance in certain spaces, it also opens the door to a new kind of connection, one that is built on truth, on alignment, on shared depth. So if you've been feeling different within your own family, if you've been sensing that quiet separation, that internal shift, that unspoken awareness that you don't quite fit the same way anymore, understand this. You are not misplaced. You are not disconnected from life. You are simply tuned to something deeper. And sometimes, being on that frequency means you'll hear things others don't, feel things others can't explain, and walk paths others aren't ready to take. That doesn't make your journey wrong. It makes it meaningful. And even if no one around you fully understands it yet, it doesn't make it any less real, or any less powerful. And that difference created distance. Sometimes love doesn't mean alignment. One of the hardest truths to accept in life is this: you can love someone deeply and still not be meant to stay close to them. That idea feels uncomfortable at first, almost wrong, because we're taught that love means staying, holding on, keeping people close no matter what. We're taught that distance equals loss, or worse, rejection. But life doesn't always work that way. Sometimes love remains even when proximity fades. Sometimes the connection is real, but the alignment is no longer there. And that's where the confusion begins. Because your heart still cares. You still wish them well. You still feel that bond when you think about them. But at the same time, something inside you knows that staying too close, staying too involved, staying too connected in the same way, it no longer feels right. It no longer feels peaceful. And that doesn't mean the love disappeared. It means something else has changed. Your energy, your awareness, your direction. There comes a point in your life when you begin to grow, not just outwardly, but internally. Your mindset shifts. Your priorities evolve. Your spirit starts seeking something deeper, something more aligned, something more true to who you are becoming. And as that happens, your energy changes. You begin to notice things you didn't notice before. You feel what drains you. You recognize what lifts you. You become more sensitive to the environments, conversations, and connections that shape your inner world. And once you reach that level of awareness, you can't go back. You can't unfeel what you now feel. You can't ignore what your spirit is trying to show you. So even when love is still present, you may find that closeness no longer feels natural. Because love and alignment are not always the same thing. You can love someone and still feel heavy around them. You can love someone and still feel misunderstood. You can love someone and still realize that your paths are moving in different directions. And that realization is painful, because it challenges everything you thought love was supposed to be. It forces you to sit with a truth that doesn't have a clear resolution, a truth that doesn't come with easy answers or clean endings. But here's what you need to understand. Distance does not always mean hate. Distance does not always mean something is broken. Sometimes distance is protection. Protection of your peace. Protection of your growth. Protection of the version of yourself that is still unfolding. There are connections in life that served a purpose for a certain chapter, but are not meant to continue in the same way forever. Not because they were false, but because they were seasonal. And when the season changes, the connection changes too. Holding on to it in the same way can begin to create tension. It can begin to drain you. It can begin to pull you away from the direction you're meant to move in. So life creates space. Not always through dramatic endings, but through subtle shifts. Less communication, less emotional depth, less desire to engage the way you once did. And if you're not aware of what's happening, you might interpret that space as something negative. You might think, maybe I've changed too much, or maybe they don't care anymore, or even, maybe something is wrong with me. But the truth is much deeper than that. Nothing is wrong. Something is evolving. You are evolving. And evolution requires adjustment. It requires you to recognize where your energy is best supported and where it's being quietly depleted. It requires you to make decisions that don't always make sense to others, but feel necessary for your own well-being. And sometimes, those decisions involve creating distance, not out of anger, not out of resentment, but out of awareness. Awareness that your journey is taking you somewhere different. Awareness that your purpose requires a certain level of clarity, focus, and alignment. Awareness that not every connection, no matter how meaningful, is meant to stay at the same level forever. And that's where maturity comes in, because it takes strength to accept that you can love someone and still let the dynamic change. It takes clarity to understand that closeness is not the only measure of love. And it takes courage to honor your growth, even when it creates distance between you and the people you care about. This is not about cutting people off. It's about understanding where you stand. It's about recognizing that your path is unique, and that not everyone will walk it with you in the same way. Some will walk beside you for a lifetime. Some will walk with you for a season. And some will always be connected to you in spirit, even if they are no longer close in your daily life. And all of those connections can still hold value. All of them can still hold love. But they don't all require the same level of access to your energy. Because your energy is not unlimited. It is sacred. It shapes how you think, how you feel, how you move through the world. And protecting that energy is not selfish. It's necessary. Especially when you are growing into a version of yourself that requires more intention, more awareness, more alignment. So if you've been feeling that shift, if you've been noticing that certain connections don't feel the same anymore, don't rush to label it as something negative. Pause, reflect, listen to what your inner voice is trying to tell you. Because sometimes what feels like distance is actually guidance. Guidance toward a space where you can grow more freely. Guidance toward relationships that align more deeply with who you are becoming. Guidance toward a version of yourself that is more at peace, more grounded, more in tune with your purpose. You are allowed to love people and still move differently. You are allowed to care and still create space. You are allowed to honor what was while embracing what is unfolding. And most importantly, you are allowed to grow, even if that growth changes your relationships, even if that growth creates distance. Because distance in its truest form is not always about separation. Sometimes it's about evolution. Because staying could have cost you everything. The hardest truth is that it had to happen this way. There is a quiet moment that comes after struggle, after confusion, after the ache that feels like it will never end. A moment where everything inside you, your mind, your heart, your spirit, begins to settle, just enough to take a deep breath and finally see clearly. It's the moment you begin to understand. Acceptance doesn't come first, it comes last, and often it comes after pain. Because the truth is, this pain is not the enemy. Pain is the teacher. Pain is the compass that points you toward truth, toward clarity, toward growth you could not have reached any other way. When you felt distance from people you love, when you felt misunderstood by those you've trusted, when you felt alone even in rooms full of familiar faces, it's natural to resist, to question, to demand answers that may never come in the way you expect. But slowly, in the quiet, something begins to shift. You start to notice patterns you couldn't see before. You begin to feel the subtle energy in interactions, the way certain conversations leave you heavier than they should, the way certain expectations drain you, the way some connections no longer uplift your spirit the way they once did. And the ache you felt, that emptiness, that sense of disconnection, it begins to make sense. Not because the people around you changed, or because you stopped loving them, but because you have changed. You are evolving. Your spirit is waking up to truths you could not grasp before. Your heart is opening to a purpose larger than familiarity. And that awakening, it requires space. Space to breathe. space to reflect, space to grow without the weight of old patterns holding you back. At first, understanding this is painful, because love doesn't vanish. Love doesn't disappear just because distance forms, and the heart naturally resists what it cannot yet control or fully explain. You feel the pull of attachment, the desire to hold on, to bridge the gap, to restore things to the way they were. But there's a subtle, undeniable voice inside that begins to whisper, maybe this distance is not punishment. Maybe it is protection. It doesn't make the loneliness go away, and it doesn't remove the sting of feeling misunderstood. But it offers perspective. It begins to shift your focus from resentment, confusion, or blame to understanding, healing, and eventually gratitude. You begin to see that distance is sometimes necessary for the chosen ones, necessary for those who are being prepared for something greater, for something beyond ordinary life. It is not a curse, it is a form of guidance, a divine pause, a space carved out for growth, reflection, and awakening. And as you begin to accept this, something miraculous happens. The pain softens, the questions quiet, the weight of expectation lifts. You start to recognize the lessons hidden in every misunderstanding, every silence, every moment of separation. You realize that each uncomfortable feeling, each heartbreak, each moment of being alone was shaping you, refining your character, sharpening your intuition, strengthening your resilience. Acceptance does not mean you approve of every moment of suffering. Acceptance does not mean you forget the hurt. Acceptance simply means you see clearly that even the hardest experiences carry meaning, that even the deepest cracks in your life allow light to enter, and that understanding changes everything. You begin to realize that the distance was never meant to punish you. It was meant to protect you from energy that would slow you down, from patterns that would hold you back, from connections that would distract you from the path you were meant to walk. You see now that pain has a purpose. Clarity emerges from suffering. Growth is born in the spaces where we feel most vulnerable. And as you stand in that truth, you begin to feel a quiet peace you may not have known existed before. You understand that being chosen does not mean life will be easy. It means life will be meaningful. It means your journey will not always be comfortable, but it will always guide you closer to your true self. And in that moment of acceptance, you start to feel something powerful: freedom. Freedom from the need to fix everything. Freedom from the need to explain yourself. Freedom from the pressure of forcing connections that no longer align with who you are becoming. Because you finally understand love is not always about closeness. Love is about respect for yourself, for your growth, and for the timing of life. You can hold love in your heart, even if proximity is impossible. You can honor the people who shaped you, even if the roles they play in your life have changed. You can feel gratitude for the lessons, for the protection, for the guidance, even when it came wrapped in silence or distance. And slowly, the ache of separation transforms. It becomes lighter. It becomes a reminder not of what you lost, but of what you are gaining. Clarity, strength, wisdom, alignment, purpose. Pain was never meaningless. Distance was never accidental. And the quiet moments you once feared, the moments you felt most alone, were shaping you to become exactly who you were meant to be. So you breathe, deeply, slowly, and you let the acceptance settle in, not as resignation, not as giving up, but as understanding, as peace, as a quiet knowing that the journey, even with its distance, its struggles, its heartbreak, is unfolding perfectly, guiding you to where you are truly meant to be. Because the chosen ones do not walk paths that everyone can understand. They do not always remain close to the familiar, but they grow, they awaken, they transform, and through acceptance, they begin to see the beauty in the journey, the purpose in the pain, and the clarity that comes from trusting life, even when life asks them to walk apart from those they love. You are exactly where you are meant to be. You are safe. You are guided, and your journey is unfolding as it should. And that's when everything started to make sense. If this message reached you, you're already on the right path. There is a quiet strength in knowing you are exactly where you are meant to be, even if the path feels uncertain, even if the nights are long and heavy, even if you felt the sting of distance, rejection, or misunderstanding. This is not the end of your story. It is only the beginning of a chapter that was written for you long before you even realized it. You are not alone. Not ever. Even when it feels like no one sees you, even when the world seems distant, even when the people you love are far away, not in spirit, but in understanding, you are accompanied. You are surrounded by a quiet guidance, a force greater than circumstance, a protection that moves invisibly yet powerfully through your life. You have been chosen, not because you are perfect, but because you are capable. Not because the journey will be easy, but because your heart and your spirit were made for it. Sometimes the hardest part is realizing that growth requires space, that evolution requires distance, that the love you carry does not always demand closeness. And in those moments, when separation feels like loss, remember this: the universe, the divine, or the life force moving through you, whatever you call it, is not punishing you. It is preparing you. It is shaping you. It is lifting you higher than you could have reached without the quiet challenges, without the isolation, without the invisible lessons that only pain can teach. You may have questioned yourself along the way. You may have wondered why you feel different from those around you, why your energy is sensitive, why your heart longs for something unseen. These questions are not signs of weakness. They are signs of awakening. They are the markers of someone walking a path that is uncommon, sacred, and deeply meaningful. And every step you have taken, every tear you have shed, every moment you have doubted yourself, has brought you closer to clarity, closer to alignment, closer to the truth of who you are. The beauty of this journey is that it is uniquely yours. There is no need to compare yourself, no need to justify your pace, no need to explain your choices. You were chosen for a reason. Your experiences, your struggles, and even your solitude are all part of the process that is shaping your strength, your vision, and your ability to trust yourself. Trust in your instincts. Trust in your growth. Trust in the quiet guidance that has always been moving you forward, even when you couldn't see the path. You may carry scars from the past. You may still feel the echoes of hurt, disappointment, or confusion. And that is okay. Every scar tells a story. Every wound carries a lesson. Every moment that once felt unbearable has been quietly teaching you resilience, patience, and perspective. The past is not a chain, it is a foundation. It is proof that you have endured, that you have learned, and that you are ready to step into the life you were meant to live. Embrace your journey with courage. Let go of what no longer serves you. Release the need to control everything and everyone around you. Accept the people, the experiences, and even the pain as pieces of a larger design, one that you are only beginning to understand. Strength is not in holding on to what is familiar, but in trusting what is unseen. Peace is not in erasing the past, but in integrating it. Confidence is not in knowing all the answers, but in walking forward anyway, knowing that every step has purpose. Even in moments of silence, you are seen. Even in moments of uncertainty, you are guided. Even in moments when the world seems to move without you, your soul is aligning perfectly with its own rhythm. You are stronger than you know. You are wiser than you believe, and the life that is waiting for you is greater than anything you have imagined. So take a deep breath. Let the quiet wash over you. Let the awareness of your purpose settle into your bones. Trust yourself, trust the journey, trust the process, and most importantly, trust that every moment, the joy, the pain, the solitude, the connection, has been leading you exactly where you are meant to be. Stand tall, even when no one is standing with you. Shine brightly, even when the world feels dim. Speak your truth, even when your voice trembles, and move forward with the calm certainty that you are exactly who you are meant to be. And your journey, every part of it, has meaning. You are not forgotten. You are not abandoned. You are not alone. And in this quiet knowing, in this deep acceptance, in this unwavering trust, you will find your power. You will find your peace. You will find yourself. Walk forward, chosen one. The path has always been yours. And the world is waiting for the light only you can bring. Some distances are painful, but they lead you exactly where you're meant